Chapter 9, Part 5, the Palace of Ikere in Nigeria. We're not looking at the palace, of course. We're looking at a sculpture of a king on a throne. And it's important to note that the female has the procreative power. So she's the first wife. She's the senior wife. There's multiple wives in African culture and also Middle Eastern culture, which is nearby. But his crown is topped by a bird, and that's a symbol for the female reproductive power ancestors and deities. So it's important. Notice she's holding on to the throne and empowering him with her gaze, I would say. And then she's got scarification on her face, which would be traditional. Seats of government is our next subheading, and this is the House of Parliament, and it was rebuilt in 1840. It burned down in 1836, and they wanted to think about a design. There was a more modern looking design initially thought of, but they wanted to connect it with the medieval era, which Gothic is the second half of medieval era. The first half is Romanesque. But at any rate, they did a Gothic revival style. Okay, so it's not truly Gothic. It does have those pointed arches, which are a little bit hard to see from here, but it does have that. But it looks like a church, or it looks like a castle built in the medieval era. So it's connecting the history of Britain, and it's also solidifying the sense of Christianity. Oh, and by the way, I meant to mention this before. The Queen of England, even today, she's one of the longest royal lines still living. She is the head of the Church of England. So she's still considered a deity and a descendant of, since a royal lineage, that there is a sense of divinity. It doesn't get talked about, and the book says that leaders no longer believe this. I don't know that there was ever anything where she came out and said, no, I absolutely don't believe that. But as far as we know, that is her status. She is divine. Okay, Maori Meeting House is our next one, New Zealand. So the Maori nation in the 19th century was colonized by Europeans, mostly British people. So it's near Australia. Now, Australia, just to give you that history, is a penal colony. Those were prisoners that committed crimes, and that is what Australia was made up of. New Zealand was the upper landed gentry. So descendants nowadays with the what we call Kiwis, New Zealand people versus the Australians, they do not feel class that they're of the same class. I'm talking about the European settlers. They argue about that a great deal. Okay, the Maori are the indigenous culture, like the Aboriginals in Australia, but they're not super related. They're a different lineage, but their meeting house was very important in terms of entering in, because it represents the body of a powerful ancestor. So you're entering into your history, you're entering into the body. And I know if some of you know, especially with the Catholic religion, for the church is the body of Christ. If that makes sense, you're entering into this body and you're in a ritualized state, and you're respectful, and you're reconnecting and reaffirming your tribal values and clan ties. Same thing as a Christian church, in a sense. Not exactly, because this is more about ancestor worship. So there's carvings with swirls and lines. They think that the Maori originally were the first ones to do tattoos on the body. We don't know for sure, but that was one of the countries before the 19th century, much earlier, that was part of where people sailed to, all the people sailing around the world, explorers. So occasionally they would go somewhere and adopt a culture. That was really where a lot of interactions with cultures happened, was in the sailing ships from, the time of Columbus and even earlier Magellan. Okay, but anyway, these facial features, all the expressions and the carvings delineating the tattoos, give it power, give the figures power. Okay, this is a Roman monument in the year 81 CE. It's marble on concrete. So it was a concrete. The Romans had concrete, by the way. It's called caementa. I believe, I don't know for sure, but I think what we're looking at here is some eroded concrete, some of this here. And then we have this piece here, and then it's faced in marble. Beautiful structure, absolutely amazing. Over 2,000 years, this thing has not fallen apart, and the lettering is still all intact. So we have Corinthian columns, a little bit of that detail here we can see at the top, and fluted columns, which are similar to the Ionic columns in the Greek orders. So this is the Arch of Titus, and the attic is the part with the inscription. Under the vault, right here, that's a vault, right? It's an arch, but it's an extended arch. It's kind of wide, so then we're going to call it a vault. So an arch that, let's see, how do you want to say it? An arch that is wide is called a vault, okay? So Titus is becoming a god. It's about his victories. So this is another famous piece, Andrea del Verrocchio, equestrian monument, and this is in Italy. Equestrian monuments were very common. Now, not all of them have survived because during times of war, bronze is melted down. But usually an emperor or a ruler on a horse is something to emphasize power, okay? So he's got a menacing or aloof facial expression here, right? We can see that. So this is, again, going back to sort of terrorizing the people, making them know that the emperor or the ruler is intense and powerful. It's a 15-foot statue on a high pedestal. So you're walking around down here looking up at this guy. That's important. You have to look up to this ruler, okay? All right, we're going to go to the next PowerPoint